The ultra-rich think their money makes them untouchable, until they break the wrong person. When a powerful billionaire family publicly humiliated a helpless maid, they thought it was just another cover-up. They had no idea they had just laid hands on the only daughter of the city's most ruthless mafia don. Watch what happens when the ultimate predator steps out of the shadows for absolute retribution. You won't want to miss a single second of this tactical takedown. If you like this kind of story, please like and subscribe. Let's dive into the story now. If you don't lick that scotch off my Italian leather boots right now, girl, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. The drunken snarl echoed through the penthouse of the Grand Horizon Hotel, followed by a chorus of cruel, elite laughter. Lily was on her hands and knees, her chest heaving as the sticky, burning amber liquid dripped from her hair onto her uniform. She was 19, working a hidden double shift under a fake name just to pay her college tuition, completely hidden from her father's dangerous world. She reached for a rag, but the billionaire heir, Arthur Sterling Jr., deliberately kicked her wrist. The sharp crack of bone against marble made Lily scream, tears finally spilling over her bruised cheeks. "You missed a spot," Arthur laughed, raising his foot to press his heel into her back. The socialites around the room sipped their champagne, watching the entertainment. To them, a maid wasn't human, she was just hotel property. Then the massive mahogany entrance doors didn't just open, they blew inward, splintering off their hinges. The laughter died instantly as four armed men in pitch-black tailored suits stormed the room, securing the perimeter with lethal precision. Behind them walked Marcus, the ghost Vance, the absolute ruler of the city's criminal underworld and the newly secret owner of the hotel. He had come to inspect his property, but his obsidian eyes locked directly onto the girl bleeding on the floor. His only daughter. The temperature in the room plummeted to absolute zero as Marcus walked forward, the slow, rhythmic thud of his shoes sounding like a death march. Arthur's personal security guards took one look at the heavy artillery pinned to the Mafia enforcers' chests and slowly raised their hands, backing away. Marcus bypassed Arthur entirely, dropping to one knee in the spilled alcohol and filth. "Lily," he whispered, a terrifying tremor of suppressed rage shaking his deep voice. "Dad." Lily sobbed, burying her bloody face into his chest. "I'm sorry. I wanted to do it on my own." Marcus didn't say another word. He stripped off his heavy wool overcoat, wrapped her shivering body in it, and handed her to his lead bodyguard. "Take her to the armored car. Code Red. Call the family surgeon." As the doors closed behind his daughter, Marcus stood up, turning to face Arthur. The cold, calculating mob boss was gone. In his place stood a monster unleashed. Arthur swallowed hard, his face draining of all color as he backed into a glass table. "Look, Vance, we didn't know she was yours. She was just a maid. We can write a check, we can compensate." "Compensate?" Marcus cut him off, a sickeningly calm smile spreading across his face. Before Arthur could blink, Marcus's hand shot out, grabbing the billionaire by the throat and lifting him entirely off the ground. Arthur's legs kicked wildly in the air, his face turning a deep, suffocating purple as the elite crowd shrieked in horror. Marcus slammed him down onto the shattered glass on the table. He pulled out his phone, dialed a single digit and spoke into the receiver. "Execute Phase 0 on Sterling Holdings. Wipe them out." Within 10 seconds, every phone in the room began to scream with emergency notifications. Arthur's father, the patriarch of the multi-billion-dollar empire, burst into the penthouse clutching his chest, his eyes wide with pure, unadulterated terror. He didn't even look at his gasping son. Instead, the older billionaire threw himself flat onto the wet marble floor, desperately groveling at the mafia boss's feet. "Marcus, please. Our banks are reporting a total freeze. We are losing everything." "You already lost everything the moment your son touched my blood," Marcus whispered, stepping over the groveling old man. By sunrise, the city was in a state of absolute shock. The Sterling Empire was completely gone, their stocks crashed to zero, their assets seized, and a live broadcast showed the former billionaire standing on the street corner in handcuffs. A brutal, public reminder that the shadows always protect their own. The iron gates of the Salvatore estate didn't just close, they sealed the world out. Inside the armored SUV, the silence was suffocating, broken only by the ragged, uneven breathing of Lily. She was huddled under her father's heavy wool overcoat, the scent of expensive tobacco and cedar wood the only anchor keeping her from spiraling into total shock. Marcus, the ghost, Vance sat beside her, his silhouette carved from the darkness of the cabin. His eyes remained locked on the passing shadows of the estate's driveway. To the city he was a myth, a phantom who pulled the strings of mayors, judges and cartels alike. But right now his jaw was clenched so tightly the muscles in his cheek rhythmically ticked. "The surgeon is already waiting in the private wing, boss," Victor, the front seat enforcer, murmured without looking back. His hands were steady on the steering wheel, but his knuckles were white. He had served Marcus for 15 years. He knew what this silence meant. It was the calm before a massacre. The vehicle slid into the underground garage of the manor. Before the engine could fully cut out, Marcus was out of the door. He didn't wait for his men. He bypassed the security detail and gently lifted Lily from the leather seat. She winced, a sharp gasp tearing from her throat as her fractured wrist shifted against his chest. "I've got you, Mia Luce," Marcus whispered, his voice dropping the lethal edge it held at the penthouse. He carried her down the brightly lit corridor of the medical wing, where Dr. Evans was already scrubbing in. The moment Lily was placed on the sterile examination table, she gripped Marcus's pristine sleeve with her uninjured hand. "Dad, don't. Please. I just wanted to be normal. I didn't want the family name to follow me." Marcus looked down at the sticky dried scotch matting her hair, at the dark purple bruising blooming across her delicate wrist. The rage inside him expanded, a cold, crushing weight that threatened to tear the room apart. He leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "You wanted independence, Lily, and I let you try. But those animals didn't attack a Vance tonight. They attacked a defenseless girl. That is a sin this city cannot afford to forgive." He turned on his heel, his overcoat swirling behind him like a shroud. Outside the medical wing, Victor stood at absolute attention, holding a fresh, black linen shirt and a silver basin of water. Marcus didn't say a word. He stripped off his blood-stained shirt, throwing it to the floor, and washed his hands. The water in the basin turned a faint, swirling pink from the residue of the penthouse confrontation. "Where are they?" Marcus asked, his voice entirely devoid of emotion. It was the tone he used when ordering a permanent erasure. "The Sterling Patriarch is outside the estate gates, boss," Victor reported, his eyes fixed ahead. "He's been there for 20 minutes. He drove himself. No security. He's begging for an audience. His son is still at the penthouse, surrounded by our men. He hasn't stopped vomiting from panic." Marcus fastened the silver cufflinks of his fresh shirt. "Let the old man wait in the rain for another 10 minutes. Then bring him to the study. Let him think there is a sliver of hope left in this world before I take it away." The fire in Marcus's private study crackled, throwing long, predatory shadows across the mahogany walls. Arthur Sterling Sr., a man whose face had graced the cover of every major financial magazine for a decade, looked like a hollow ghost. His expensive silk tie was crooked, his hair soaked from the torrential rain he had just stood in outside the gates. He didn't sit in the leather chair offered to him. He couldn't. His legs were shaking too violently. "Marcus," the old billionaire choked out, his voice cracking as the door clicked shut behind him. "Please. I am begging you as a father. My son is a fool. A spoiled, arrogant idiot. He didn't know who she was. If he had known she was a Vance, he would have treated her with respect," Marcus interrupted, stepping out of the shadows by the window. He held a glass of ice, swirling it slowly. The rhythmic clinking of the cubes against the crystal was the only sound in the room. But because he thought she was just a maid, a girl working double shifts to survive, he felt entitled to break her wrist. He felt entitled to pour his trash over her head. Sterling Sr. fell to his knees, the impact of his knees hitting the hardwood floor echoing like a gunshot. "Wipe out my personal accounts. Take the hotel group. Take the shipping lines. Just call off the liquidity freeze. My board of directors is threatening to dump every share by morning. If the market opens like this, Sterling Holdings will be bankrupt by noon." Marcus walked over, standing directly over the groveling billionaire. He didn't look down with disgust. He looked down with absolute indifference. "You think this is about money, Arthur? You think your digital numbers on a screen can buy back the bone your son fractured? I'll make him apologize publicly," Sterling cried, his hands clawing at Marcus's polished leather shoes. "On every network. He will crawl to her." "He will," Marcus murmured coldly. "But not because you negotiated it. Victor." The enforcer stepped out of the corner, holding a sleek black tablet. "Phase 2, Marcus commanded. Victor tapped the screen once. "Done, boss. The city district attorney just signed the warrants. The Sterling real estate portfolio is currently being flagged for federal racketeering and tax evasion. The assets are no longer frozen, Arthur. They are seized by the state." Sterling Sr. gasped, his chest heaving as if the air had been violently sucked from his lungs. His family name, built over 3 generations of ruthless high society maneuvering, had just been dismantled in less than an hour. "You're a monster," Sterling whispered, looking up with a mixture of hatred and total defeat. "No," Marcus corrected softly, leaning down until his obsidian eyes were inches from the old man's face. "I am the man who keeps the monsters out of your gated communities. But tonight you brought one inside. Tell your son to dress in his finest suit tomorrow. He has an appointment with the media. And if he misses a single word of the script I write for him, the federal prison he's going to will be the safest place left for him." By 6 a.m., the rain had cleared, leaving the city streets slick and reflective under the gray morning sky. But inside the headquarters of Channel 4 News, the atmosphere was chaotic. The executive producer was pacing the floor, her phone ringing off the hook with high-level government officials telling her to run the broadcast without interruption. Arthur Sterling Jr. sat in the makeup chair, but no amount of powder could hide the deathly pallor of his skin. His lip was split from where Marcus had slammed him onto the table the night before, and his hands trembled so violently the assistant couldn't even hand him a glass of water. 2 of Marcus's enforcers stood at the back of the studio, their coats open just enough to reveal the matte black holsters beneath their arms. They didn't say a word. They didn't need to. Their presence was a constant reminder that Lily's father was watching through their eyes. 2 minutes to air, Mr. Sterling," the stage manager called out, her voice tight. She didn't know the full story, but she knew the mighty Sterling empire had dissolved overnight. The news tickers at the bottom of the screens were already flashing red. Sterling Holdings crashes 2-0. Entire board under arrest. Arthur stumbled onto the set, dropping into the anchor chair like a man walking to the gallows. The bright studio lights hit his face, blinding him, making him feel completely exposed to the millions of viewers currently tuning in across the state. The red light on camera 1 flashed on. "Good morning," Arthur began, his voice cracking instantly. He swallowed hard, staring directly into the lens, reading the teleprompter that Marcus's men had personally loaded into the system. "I am standing before you today not as a businessman but as a criminal. Last night at the Grand Horizon Hotel, I committed an act of unspeakable cowardice." Behind the camera, one of the enforcers slowly tapped his watch. Arthur's heart hammered against his ribs. He knew what happened if he faltered. He remembered the bone-crushing grip around his throat from the night before. "I physically assaulted and humiliated a young woman employed as a member of the hotel staff. I used my wealth and position to inflict pain on someone I deemed beneath me. I am here to state publicly that there is no excuse for my actions." Tears of pure humiliation began to stream down his face, mixing with the heavy makeup. The entire city was watching him unravel. The elite socialites he had partied with hours ago were currently deleting his contact information from their phones. "I have surrendered my assets," Arthur choked out, the script forcing him to seal his own fate. "And I am prepared to face the full extent of the law. To the young woman I wronged. I am a monster. And I pray you find the peace I have permanently destroyed for myself." As the broadcast cut to commercial, Arthur collapsed forward onto the desk, sobbing uncontrollably. The illusion of billionaire invincibility was shattered forever. The shadows had spoken, and the city now knew that some lines could never be crossed. The news broadcast echoed through the silent penthouse of the Salvatore Manor, the sound of Arthur Sterling's weeping filling the spacious living room. Marcus Vance stood by the glass wall, a phone pressed to his ear as he watched the morning sun finally break through the city's smog. "The public apology has cleared, boss," the voice of his chief financial officer stated over the encrypted line. "The Sterling stock is non-existent. Our shell companies have already absorbed 40% of their real estate holdings for pennies on the dollar. By noon, the Vance Syndicate will legally own every square inch of the Grand Horizon Hotel line." "Good," Marcus said, his voice clipped and flat. "Rebrand them immediately. Flush out the entire management staff. If there is a single supervisor who looked away while my daughter was mistreated, ensure they are blacklisted from the hospitality industry permanently. Consider it done." "And what about the fiancée Victoria?" Marcus's eyes darkened. He remembered the blonde socialite who had shoved Lily back onto the floor. "She comes from old money. Target her family's offshore trusts. Let them find out what happens when you associate with trash." He hung up without waiting for a reply, turning as the door to the private wing softly opened. Lily stepped into the room. Her uniform was gone, replaced by a soft cream-colored sweater, but her right arm was encased in a thick black medical cast. Her face was pale, the cut on her cheek covered by a neat white bandage. She looked small against the massive architecture of the Vance estate, but the defiance in her eyes hadn't entirely burned out. "You didn't have to destroy them, Dad," she said softly, walking over to the glass wall. She looked down at the city below, the city that now knew her face, even if her real name remained hidden behind her father's iron curtain. "They destroyed themselves, Lily," Marcus replied, his tone softening as he stepped closer to her, careful not to crowd her space. "They believed their money made them gods. They needed to be reminded that they bleed just like the people they look down upon." Lily looked at her cast, her fingers tracing the hard plastic. "I just wanted to prove I could do something without your money. I wanted to be a regular student. Now everyone knows me as the maid who broke the sterlings." "They don't know you as a maid," Marcus said, his hand resting gently on her uninjured shoulder. "They know you as the girl who brought an empire to its knees. But if you want to go back to school, you will. Only this time, you won't be hiding behind a fake name. You will walk through those front doors as a Vance." Lily looked up at him, the weight of his world pressing down on her. She had tried to escape the shadow of the Mafia Don, but the dark reality of the city had dragged her right back into his protection. And deep down, looking at the city that now feared her family more than ever, she knew she could never go back. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was packed, but the usual lively chatter of the city's elite had turned into a panicked murmur. The annual summer gala was supposed to be a celebration of wealth, but tonight, every conversation was held in hushed tones. The ghost of the Sterling family's destruction hung over the room like an executioner's axe. "They say Marcus Vance didn't even use a weapon," a diamond-clad socialite whispered to her husband, her eyes darting nervously toward the entrance. "He just made one phone call, and their entire lineage was erased from the registry by morning." "It's a warning to all of us," her husband muttered, gripping his champagne glass tighter. "The girl wasn't just a hotel worker. She was his blood. We've been hosting parties on his territory for years, completely blind to who was watching us from the kitchens." Suddenly, the heavy double doors of the ballroom swung open. The room went dead silent, the string quartet faltering for a fraction of a second before scrambling to keep their rhythm. Marcus Vance walked into the room. He wasn't wearing the tactical gear of his enforcers, but a flawless midnight blue tuxedo that cost more than a luxury vehicle. He looked elegant, dangerous, and entirely at ease. But he wasn't alone. Walking beside him, her hand resting on his forearm, was Lily. She wore a stunning black silk gown that gracefully hid the medical cast on her right arm. Her dark hair was pinned up, revealing the faint, healing scar on her cheek like a badge of honor. She didn't look like the trembling waitress who had been kicked on the floor 24 hours ago. She looked like Underworld royalty. The very people who had watched her suffer at the Grand Horizon penthouse were standing in this room. Lily caught the eye of a wealthy developer who had laughed when Arthur poured scotch on her head. The man instantly turned pale, dropping his gaze to the floor, his hands shaking so violently he had to set his drink down. Marcus felt the subtle shift in Lily's posture. He didn't look at the crowd. His eyes remained fixed ahead as they walked toward the VIP section. "Do you see them, Lily?" he asked, his baritone voice easily carrying over the silence of the room. "They aren't looking down at you anymore." "They're terrified, Dad," Lily whispered, her heart hammering against her ribs, but her chin remained high. "Good," Marcus replied coldly. "Fear is the only language these people truly understand. Respect is earned, but fear ensures they never forget the cost of their arrogance." As they reached the center of the room, the mayor of the city stepped forward, his face slick with sweat as he forced a tight, plastic smile. "Mr. Vance, a pleasure to see you tonight. And this must be your lovely daughter. We were so deeply saddened to hear about the incident last night." Marcus stopped, his obsidian eyes locking onto the politician. The air around them instantly grew heavy. "Saddened, Mr. Mayor? Or relieved that my daughter didn't mention your name when she told me who was standing in that room doing nothing?" The mayor swallowed hard, his face draining of all color as he took an instinctive step backward. "Marcus, please? I was on the other side of the penthouse. I didn't see." "You see exactly what your campaign donors pay you to see," Marcus cut him off, his voice dropping into a register that made the surrounding elites freeze. "But let me make one thing perfectly clear to everyone standing in this room tonight. The Vance family is expanding its interests. The Grand Horizon Hotel Group is now under my direct management. And my daughter is the new majority shareholder." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. The maid they had treated like disposable property was now their landlord. Lily looked at her father, shocked by the sudden announcement, but she didn't object. She looked out at the sea of wealthy, terrified faces. For months, she had believed that hiding from her father's world was the only way to be safe. But the elite had shown her their true colors. They didn't respect humility, they only respected power. If any of you, Marcus continued, his gaze sweeping across the room like a physical scythe, or your spoiled children, so much as speak to a member of the service staff in my establishments with anything less than absolute deference, I will consider it a personal declaration of war against my family. He didn't wait for a response. He signaled to Victor, who stepped forward with a documents case. Mr. Mayor, Lily said, her voice steady and clear for the first time, surprising even her father. She stepped forward, using her uninjured hand to take a folder from Victor. These are the revised zoning permits for the downtown district. You will sign them by midnight, or my father's banks will foreclose on your re-election fund. The mayor looked at the 19-year-old girl, then at the lethal Don standing directly behind her like a shadow. He didn't hesitate. Of course, Miss Vance. Immediately. Lily turned back to her father, a small dark smile finally touching her lips. The innocence of the maid had died on that kitchen floor, but something far more dangerous had taken its place. Marcus watched her, a fierce sense of pride overriding his cold fury. He guided her toward the exit, the crowd parting before them like the Red Sea. They had come to the gala to deliver a message, and the city had received it loud and clear. The billionaires thought they ruled the city through paper money, but the Mafia ruled the billionaires through blood. As they stepped out into the crisp night air, where a line of armored vehicles waited, Lily looked back at the grand palace of high society. She was no longer running from the shadows. She was leading them.